This time I want to talk with you about integrity. In fact, I entitled this an introduction to integrity, and it's going to be in two parts. The reason that I've called it an introduction is because in the 21st century, integrity is very scarce. It's one of those qualities that we all admire, we all expect others to have when they're dealing with us. But it's also one of those qualities that most people in the 21st century lack in their own lives. To be fair, integrity has always been a scarce item. But there are times in history when integrity becomes more rare than other times, and this happens to be one of those times, especially in the Western world. We know that integrity is valuable because we don't want people to lie to us. We want them to have integrity and tell us the truth. We don't want people to steal from us. We don't want people to do things that will harm us for their benefit. And yet, when it's reversed, and it's our turn to show integrity to someone else, how easy it is to tell just a little lie, to share just a little bit of information that may not be quite accurate, but it helps benefit us. Integrity is absolutely rare, and that's one of the things that makes it such a valued commodity. When you, as a follower of Jesus Christ, live in this spiritual foundation of integrity, you are actually living out a quality of God's kingdom that this world desperately needs. In dealing with this topic, I want to look at Daniel chapter 1. And like I said, this is going to be in two parts because I want to take some time and walk through this slowly and strategically with you because of the value, but also because of the necessity of integrity in the 21st century. You and I have the opportunity to live so differently from those around us. Our integrity will absolutely transform the way people consider the God that we serve. Now, you all know the situation. I'll give it to you here in a capsule in case you click off to watch bunny rabbits or kittens on the next video. What we're looking at here is a kingdom, Jerusalem, that is absolutely demolished. Nebuchadnezzar from the Babylons comes in and he destroys this place, takes all of their wealth, takes many people as slaves. And what we're looking at when we get to the opening chapters is a nation that has been uprooted, transplanted, and Nebuchadnezzar is in the process of not only transferring them physically, but transferring them mentally, emotionally, and spiritually into a Babylonian lifestyle. And in the midst of this, we meet four men. We know them as Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These four men are living lives of integrity in the midst of a culture that is trying to reshape them. And we have a great deal to learn about integrity and our place in God's kingdom as we look at this text together. What we're looking at here is the fact that integrity is not a philosophical concept. We all like to talk about it. You might not realize it, but you enjoy talking about integrity, or the lack thereof. You scroll through Facebook, you look at Instagram, you watch the news, you listen to friends, you talk with them, and comments are made along these lines. That person is so two-faced. What are you doing? Discussing the lack of integrity. Or that person has my back no matter what. What are you saying? That person has integrity. We all value integrity. We look at the world through the lens of integrity, expecting it to be there in the lives of others, even when it's absent in our own life. What makes integrity so impressive is when it moves from a philosophical concept into the real world lifestyle that you and I encounter on a regular basis. Another way to say it is this: integrity becomes real in the face of problems. I don't like problems. I'm assuming you don't like problems. But one of the values that problems have in our lives is they give us an opportunity, want it or not, to move integrity from a philosophical concept, something we talk about, wish for, hope for, into a real world experience where we have the opportunity to choose integrity over anything else. And in this opening chapter, we see that happening. Now, notice with me, I won't read them to you, but you can read the first 2 verses yourself. We'll read some of the others together. The first 2 verses, Nebuchadnezzar comes in, sacks Jerusalem, steals all their stuff, and steals a bunch of their people. That's the Zemanek's translation of verses 1 and 2. Included in this group are these 4 young men that we mentioned earlier, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel. They're now in a new home. Now think about this. They are boys who had been brought up in and around Jerusalem. They had the temple, the sacrificial system, the dietary laws, the lifestyle of a Jewish young man. These guys had been raised in a culture that had a certain and definite ethic to it, and now they find themselves, not by choice, transplanted in an entirely new community. One where the rules are different, one where worship is different, where the things that are valued are different. They are literally fish out of water. This is an opportunity for them to give in, to say things like, well, if God didn't want me in this place, he wouldn't have put me here. He must want me to fit in. Or use that great line, can't we all just get along? I'm going to do what's necessary to fit in here. We all have done it. We all know people who've done it. Because of the culture of a workplace, the culture of a team, the culture of certain social environments, we either have or know those who have changed, traded out, sold out their integrity toward God because they wanted to fit into a new environment. These young men were in that kind of a situation. This is an opportunity for them to make a decision. Will we serve God when it's convenient, or will we serve God no matter what? Now, you've read Daniel, no doubtedly, and you know the choice that they've made. Not only did they have a new home, but these guys were faced with an entirely new worldview. Let me read for you verses 3 and 4. The king ordered that Asaph, the chief of his court officials, bring some of the Israelites into the royal family and from the nobility, young men without any physical blemish, that would include probably speech, so I would not be included, without any physical blemish, good looking, maybe I would, just kidding, suitable for instruction in all wisdom, knowledge, perception, and capable of serving at the king's palace, and to teach them the Chaldean language and literature. So far, it just sounds like a work promotion. Bring these slaves, but rather than having them build buildings, we're going to build their minds so they can be a part of the social structure of this community. What a great gig. What we're really looking at here is a shift in worldview. Their entire lives, they had been exposed to Jewish wisdom, Jewish lifestyle, Jewish ethics. They had been exposed to the 10 Commandments and how they worked out in daily life. For their entire lives, these 4 men had integrated themselves into a worldview that said there is one God, and I am to live for him no matter what under these stipulations. Now they find themselves in a situation they did not want, maybe even feeling a bit abandoned by God, new location. And in the midst of it, they're also having to experience learning a new worldview, learning about a multiplicity of gods, which, by the way, don't exist, but they did in their literature. They had to learn to live under a worldview that said might makes right, rather than the mighty must live by God's right. They had to live under a new sexual orientation. Everything about their lives and what they had come to believe and learn as young men is now being assaulted by an entirely new way of thinking. And they could have given in. They could have said, well, God has put me here. He may have abandoned me. Maybe this is God's plan, or maybe God isn't as real as I thought he was. And after all, I'm really liking these stories about Baal and these other gods. They really do fit better my personality and desires than the God that I've been told about my whole life. They could have succumbed to the sexual differences that the Babylonians had versus what they were raised with. But integrity is the ability and the willingness to stand up for what you know to be true, even when the entire world around you says it should be different. On occasion, I've had opportunity to do this. As you know, one of the great gifts that I've been able to participate in is open and frank discussions as an invited guest to various groups of same-sex relationships. And oftentimes, almost all of the time, they're gracious and kind to me. Even though they sometimes disagree with my point of view, they at least give me a hearing and are very kind. And almost always, we get to leave as friends. But there has been more than one occasion when I left like John the Baptist, carrying my head on a platter. In those situations, my worldview comes in contact with their worldview and they don't fit. And so if I'm looking to make friends, I will adjust what I'm saying so that it greases the wheels a little bit and we can all leave there thinking, wow, Steve's a great speaker and we really like that shirt he's wearing. But at the end of the day, integrity is integrity towards God. Knowing that God sees, that God opens doors, that God provides opportunities, sometimes opportunities we don't want, such as being drug away to Babylon. But in the midst of all of this, we have to be faithful to God and what he teaches. That's integrity. And these young men find themselves in a new location with a new worldview and two more things. One is a new diet. Now, quarantine, you're probably thinking about diet and how you might need one after nearly 60 days of being stuck at home with nothing to do but eat Fruit Loops, which to me is a good food. Their diet in their religious setting was more than just what we eat and what we don't eat. Their diet was a direct reflection of their commitment to God. There were things that they ate and things that they didn't eat. Now, the things God forbid them to eat were not things that would kill them. They weren't things that were necessarily bad. They were simply a way of marking out in a public setting those who followed God and those who don't. When you're sitting down at a meal and they say, why aren't you eating this? You're able to say to them, I serve God, and one of the ways that I serve him is by not partaking in this particular type of meat. And now they're in Babylon, where everything has changed. And they've been instructed as slaves to eat this incredible diet. And yet integrity to God is on the line. What's on the line here is not what goes into their mouth. What's on the line here is what has been instilled in their heart. Will I be faithful to God or not? In refusing to eat the king's food, we see a great deal of how integrity works in the real world. Because in verse number 5, when they're told about this, they immediately begin this process of coming up with a plan whereby they can negotiate with their captors. This was not a starvation diet. This was an opportunity to say, this is how we choose to live because of the God we serve. We are your slaves. Will you meet us halfway? Let's try this. We're going to look at that in the next lesson. So they have a new home, a new worldview being pushed on them, a new diet being pushed on them, and then finally they're given new names. Look at verse 6 and 7 with me. Among them were the descendants of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief officials gave them other names. They gave Belshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's the names we know them by. These four guys each had a name, and their names were significant because in the Middle Eastern and Near Eastern culture of that day, as it is very much today, names were not just a way of marking somebody out. Names carried with them a very significant meaning, almost always a religious meaning. And what we see with these four guys is that their names meant, in order, God is my judge. Second, God is gracious. Third, God is without equal. And fourth, God is my helper. That is their Hebrew name. Every time that they spoke each other's names to each other, they were speaking these truths about their God. Their name marked out who they were. And the Babylonian culture, in a desire to crush this belief in God and replace it with their worldview, changed their names. In other words, demanded that these four guys be called something else. So they gave them these names: Belshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, Belshazzar means Bel will protect. Bel is one of their deities. Shadrach means inspiration of the sun, S-U-N, one of the things they worshipped. Shadrach, Meshach means belonging to Aku, one of their deities. And Abednego means servant of Nego, one of their deities. What they had done was to change their names in the hopes that every time they were called by this new name, they would begin to identify with the gods of the Babylonian Empire. What we grasp from all of this is very simple. Integrity is much more than just a philosophical concept. It's something that allows us to go through the problems of life knowing that there is a God. If my new home is not what I wanted it to be, I'm not in the place I needed to be, if there's a worldview being pushed on me by family, by friends, by community, if there are new dietary things, go ahead and have one. Everybody else is doing it. You know, with the legalization of marijuana, we're seeing this now become very much an issue within the church world. Everybody's doing it. It's legal. It's part of the system. What's your problem? And they're given new names, new points of view by which they can identify themselves. Integrity becomes real when everything around us begins to shift like sand under our feet. When we find ourselves in a culture that clashes with our beliefs, we can choose to live as men and women of integrity, whereby we finally have a stake in the community because our words are backed by our lifestyle. Or we can give into the community and begin to act, behave, think, and speak like them in the hopes that somehow we'll sneak in the back door with the gospel. The deal is, if we take that second approach and we begin to mold ourselves to the world around us, even if we do sneak in the back door with the gospel message, our lifestyle will counteract what we are telling them, and our witness will be of no value at all. Our integrity means suffering at times. Our integrity means walking against the way the world does it sometimes. Our integrity means standing up for what is right, even when everyone around us is doing it differently. Integrity, when it comes down to it, is the purest form of faith. You say you love God. Jesus says, do what I've commanded you. When we live in integrity, we are walking out in a real world experience the faith we say we believe. Now, next time we get together, we'll walk through and talk about where integrity starts and the benefit of integrity over a lifetime. But I wanted to lay the foundation for you today with this bit of integrity. As you're watching this, I want to give you an opportunity to come to Christ if you don't know Him. If you come to Christ, His worldview will become yours. You will begin to view the world the way you were created to view it, and it will begin to make things less gray and more black and white. It will allow you the opportunity to live in joy, peace, and purpose. And it will allow you to have a worldview that will make sense in the good and the bad times of life. So if you're watching and ready to give your life to Christ, simply pray this with me. Father, forgive me for living my life as if you don't matter. Come into my life and be my God. I will serve you the rest of my life. Thank you for saving me. In Jesus' name. Amen. Now, for those of you who are watching and part of our church family, I want to remind you of two very important things. Number one, God loves you very much. And number two, I am proud to be your pastor. The Lord be with you.